The alarm clock screamed at 4:30 a.m., just like it did every single morning. Danny Miller's hand shot out from under the thin blanket, slapping the snooze button with the practiced accuracy of someone who'd done this 1,000 times before. 5 more minutes. That's all he wanted. Just 5 more minutes, but he knew better. 5 minutes would turn into 10, and 10 would make him late for his shift at the warehouse. Being late meant getting written up, and getting written up meant risking the only steady paycheck he had. So Danny dragged himself out of bed, his feet hitting the cold floor of his cramped apartment. The bathroom mirror showed him what he already knew: dark circles under his eyes. A face that looked older than 28. Stubble he was too tired to shave most days. This was the face of a man who was going through the motions, not living, just surviving. Danny pulled on his work clothes, the same faded jeans and company shirt he wore every day. The shirt had his name stitched on the pocket, like he was someone important, like he mattered. But in a warehouse full of guys doing the exact same job, nobody really mattered. They were all just numbers on a schedule, bodies that moved boxes from one place to another. He grabbed a banana and a protein bar on his way out. Breakfast of champions, he thought bitterly. His beat-up Toyota coughed to life on the 3rd try, and Danny headed out into the darkness. The streets were empty at this hour, just him and the streetlights and the occasional delivery truck. The warehouse was already buzzing when he clocked in at 5:45 a.m. The supervisor, a stocky guy named Pete who took his job way too seriously, barely looked up when Danny walked past. That was fine with Danny. Being invisible had its advantages. Nobody bothered you. Nobody expected anything from you. For the next 8 hours, Danny lived in a rhythm. Scan the box, load it on the pallet, wrap the pallet, move it to the loading dock, repeat. His mind went somewhere else during these hours. Sometimes he thought about his mom, lying in that hospital bed across town. Sometimes he thought about the bills piling up on his kitchen counter, but mostly he just tried not to think at all. "Hey Miller, you taking lunch?" Tommy from the next aisle called out around noon. "Yeah, give me 5, Danny called back. The break room smelled like reheated pizza and stale coffee. Danny pulled out his phone and his sad-looking sandwich. Turkey and cheese, same as yesterday, same as tomorrow. He took a bite and scrolled through his phone, not really looking for anything in particular. That's when he saw it. A video had popped up on his feed. Some boxing match. Danny's thumb hovered over the screen, ready to scroll past, but something made him stop. He tapped the video. The sound came through his earbuds. A roaring crowd, commentators losing their minds, and in the ring, a mountain of a man was demolishing his opponent. Viktor Volkov. The name appeared at the bottom of the screen. The Destroyer, they called him. Undefeated heavyweight champion. Danny watched as Volkov moved with impossible speed for someone his size. Every punch looked like it could break concrete. His opponent, a guy who probably trained his whole life for this moment, looked like a child trying to fight his father. It was over in 3 rounds. "Man's a beast," someone commented. "Nobody's beating him." Danny put his phone down and finished his sandwich. He'd been watching boxing videos for years now. Maybe it was an escape, watching people who'd actually made something of themselves, who'd fought their way out of places just like this warehouse. The afternoon shift dragged on forever, like it always did. When the clock finally hit 2:30 p.m., Danny clocked out and headed to his car. But instead of going home, he took a left turn at the intersection. There was somewhere else he needed to be. Rivera's boxing gym sat between a laundromat and a pawn shop, the kind of place you'd miss if you weren't looking for it. The sign outside was faded, half the letters barely visible. But Danny had been coming here for 3 years now, ever since he'd walked past one day and heard the sound of gloves hitting bags. Inside, the gym smelled like old leather and sweat. There was no air conditioning, just a couple of fans that pushed hot air around. The equipment was ancient, held together with duct tape and hope. But Danny loved it here. This was the only place where he felt like he could be someone different. "You're late," a voice called from the corner. Old man Rivera sat on a stool by the ring, watching 2 young fighters spar. Everyone called him Coach, though Danny had never learned his first name. He had to be pushing 70, with silver hair and hands that looked like they'd broken every bone at least once. "Sorry, Coach. Work ran long," Danny said, dropping his bag by the lockers. "Work always runs long," Coach said, but there was no anger in his voice. "Get changed. We're doing combinations today." Danny wrapped his hands with practiced efficiency, pulled on his gloves, and approached the heavy bag. The first punch felt good. The second felt better. By the 10th, he'd forgotten about the warehouse, about the bills, about everything except the rhythm of his fists hitting the bag. "Keep your left up," Coach called out. "You drop it like that, someone's going to take your head off." Danny adjusted, throwing the combination again. Left jab, right cross, left hook. Over and over until his shoulders burned and sweat poured down his face. An hour later, he was done. Completely spent, but in a good way. The kind of tired that came from actually doing something, not just existing. "You got talent, kid," Coach said as Danny unwrapped his hands. "Real talent. You ever think about actually fighting? Not just hitting bags?" Danny had heard this before. "Come on, Coach, I'm 28. Too old to start a real career. Plus, I got responsibilities." "Your mom," Coach said quietly. It wasn't a question. Everyone at the gym knew about Danny's situation. His mom had been sick for 2 years now, in and out of hospitals, and the medical bills were crushing him. "Yeah," Danny said, "among other things. I know some people," Coach continued, "could get you some amateur fights. Nothing crazy, but the money's not bad. Few $100 a fight. Coach, I appreciate it, but I can't risk getting injured. I need to work. Need the insurance." Coach nodded slowly like he understood but didn't agree. "Just think about it. You're wasting your talent loading boxes." Danny drove home as the sun was setting, his body aching in a way that felt earned. His apartment was dark when he got there. No girlfriend waiting, no family besides his mom. Just him and the silence. He made himself some pasta, the cheap kind that came in a box. While it cooked, he pulled out his phone again. That video of Viktor Volkov was still there in his feed. He watched it again, studying the way the champion moved, the way he anticipated his opponent's attacks. "Must be nice," Danny muttered to himself. Being someone. After dinner, he called the hospital. The nurse on duty said his mom had had a good day, that she was sleeping peacefully. Danny felt the knot in his chest loosen just a little. Good days were rare lately. He lay down on his couch, too tired to even make it to bed. The TV played some late-night show, but Danny wasn't watching. He was thinking about what Coach had said. About fighting. About actually stepping into a ring and testing himself against another person. It was a nice dream. But that's all it was, a dream. Danny Miller wasn't a fighter. He was a warehouse worker who punched bags after his shift. He was nobody special. Just another guy trying to get by, working a job that didn't matter, going home to an empty apartment. The truth was, Danny had accepted this was his life. Some people were meant for greatness, meant to be champions and heroes, and some people were meant to watch from the sidelines, dreaming about what might have been. As sleep started to pull him under, Danny's phone buzzed on the coffee table. Probably just another spam message. He almost ignored it, but something made him reach for it. It was a text from Coach. "Local fight next month. $300 payout. You interested?" Danny stared at the message for a long time. $300 would cover his mom's medication for the month. Maybe even leave a little extra. His thumb hovered over the keyboard. This was crazy. He'd never actually fought anyone before, not in a real match. But then again, what did he have to lose? He was already at the bottom. Things couldn't get much worse. Before he could talk himself out of it, Danny typed back, "I'm in." He hit send and immediately felt his stomach drop. What had he just done? But deep down, in a place Danny rarely let himself look, a tiny spark of something had ignited. Maybe it was hope. Maybe it was desperation. Or maybe, just maybe, it was the beginning of something bigger than he could imagine. Danny Miller didn't know it yet, but he'd just taken the first step on a journey that would change everything. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of training and work and worry. Danny's body ached in places he didn't know could ache. Every morning he'd drag himself to the warehouse with bruised ribs and sore knuckles hidden under his work gloves. Pete, his supervisor, noticed him moving slower than usual but didn't say anything. That was the thing about warehouse work. Nobody really cared as long as the boxes kept moving. The local fight was scheduled for a Friday night at the community center across town. Nothing fancy. No cameras, no crowd beyond a couple hundred people who had nothing better to do. Just two guys in a ring trying to prove something to themselves. Danny's opponent was a guy named Rodriguez, 23 years old, with a record of 2 wins and 1 loss. Coach had shown Danny some footage on his phone. The kid was fast, technical, trained at one of the better gyms downtown. "He's good," Coach had said, not sugarcoating it. but he's predictable. Stick to the game plan and you'll be fine. The night of the fight, Danny stood in the dingy locker room of the community center, wrapping his hands for what felt like the 100th time. His stomach was doing flips. What was he thinking? This was insane. He should be home watching TV, not about to get punched in the face by a trained fighter. You ready? Coach appeared in the doorway, carrying Danny's gloves. No, Danny said honestly. I feel like I'm gonna throw up. Coach laughed, a rough sound that came from deep in his chest. Good means you care. The day you're not nervous is the day you should quit. They called his name. Danny walked down a narrow hallway, his heart pounding so loud he could hear it in his ears. The community center's main room had been transformed. Folding chairs surrounded a makeshift ring. The lighting was harsh, fluorescent. The crowd was a mix of local boxing fans and bored teenagers looking for entertainment. Rodriguez was already in the ring, bouncing on his toes, looking confident. He was lean, muscular, with the easy grace of someone who'd been doing this his whole life. When he looked at Danny, there was dismissal in his eyes, like this fight was beneath him. That look made something snap inside Danny. All the years of being invisible, of being nobody, of being looked through instead of at. He climbed through the ropes and stared back. The referee gave them instructions. Touch gloves. Come out fighting. The bell rang. Rodriguez came at him fast, throwing combinations that Danny barely managed to block. The kid was every bit as good as Coach had said. But somewhere around the middle of the first round, Danny found his rhythm. He stopped thinking about technique and just fought on instinct. It wasn't pretty. Danny took several hard shots that made his head ring, but he gave back as good as he got, landing a solid right hand that snapped Rodriguez's head back. The crowd, which had been mostly quiet, started to pay attention. By the third round, both fighters were exhausted. Rodriguez's technical skill was fading, and it became a battle of pure will. Who wanted it more? Who was willing to dig deeper? In the final minute, Danny landed a combination that sent Rodriguez stumbling into the ropes. The referee stepped in, asking if he wanted to continue. Rodriguez nodded, but the fight was over. Danny had won. The crowd gave a respectable applause. Coach climbed into the ring, a rare smile on his weathered face. Not bad, kid. Not bad at all. Danny's hands were shaking from adrenaline. His face hurt. His ribs hurt. Everything hurt. But he'd done it. He'd actually won. The promoter, a heavy-set man in a cheap suit, handed Danny an envelope with $300 cash. It felt like $1 million. That night, Danny couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the fight playing out again. The feeling of landing that final combination, of proving he could do this, it was addictive. Over the next 2 months, Danny fought 3 more times. He won 2, lost 1. The money helped, but more than that, he was building something. A reputation. The local boxing community was small, and word spread about the warehouse worker who could actually fight. Then his mom's condition got worse. Danny was at work when he got the call from the hospital. They needed to run more tests, start a new treatment. The kind of treatment insurance only partially covered. The kind that would cost thousands of dollars out of pocket. Danny sat in his car during lunch break, staring at the hospital bill they'd emailed him. $11,000. It might as well have been $11 million. There was no way. Even with the fight money, even working double shifts, he'd never come up with that kind of cash. He called Coach that afternoon. I might need to take a break from training. Need to pick up more hours. There was a long pause on the other end. Come by the gym tonight. Don't make any decisions yet. Danny almost didn't go. What was the point? But something in Coach's voice made him show up anyway. The gym was nearly empty when he arrived. Just Coach and a younger guy Danny had seen around but never talked to. The kid was maybe 25, wearing expensive workout gear that looked out of place in the rundown gym. Danny, this is Chris, Coach said. He works for a boxing promoter downtown. Big time stuff, Chris extended his hand. Coach has been showing me your fights. You're raw, but you've got something. Heart. That's rare. Danny shook his hand, confused. Okay. Here's the situation, Chris continued. My boss is promoting a major exhibition match in 3 weeks. Viktor Volkov is headlining. Danny's stomach flipped at the name. The Destroyer. The undefeated champion he'd watched on his phone all those months ago. His scheduled opponent tore his ACL in training yesterday, Chris went on. We need a replacement and we need one fast. The arena's already sold out. We can't cancel. Okay, so what does that have to do with me? Danny asked, though part of him already knew. Chris looked him dead in the eye. We want you to fight him. The words hung in the air like a bad joke. Danny waited for the punchline. When it didn't come, he laughed. You're kidding, right? We'll pay you $10,000, Chris said. Show up, go 3 rounds minimum. That's all we need. Give the crowd a show. $10,000. The exact amount Danny needed for his mom's treatment. It was too perfect. Too convenient. I'd be a sacrificial lamb, Danny said slowly. You just need someone to take a beating so the champ looks good. Chris didn't deny it. Look, I'm not gonna lie to you. Volkov is in a different league. But 10 grand for one night's work? How long would it take you to make that at the warehouse? About 6 months, Danny admitted quietly. Coach says you can take a punch. Says you've got an iron chin. That's all we need. Someone who won't quit, who'll make it entertaining. The crowd wants to see the champion do his thing. You'd be helping everyone out. Danny looked at Coach, searching for guidance. The old man's face was unreadable. It's your decision, kid, Coach said. But that money could help your mom. And honestly, the exposure alone could lead to better fights down the line. Win or lose, people will know your name. Danny's mind raced. This was insane. Viktor Volkov had destroyed everyone he'd ever fought. Professional fighters with decades of experience. Olympic medalists, world champions from other organizations. And they wanted Danny, a warehouse worker with 4 amateur fights, to step into the ring with him. When do you need an answer? Danny asked. Tonight, Chris said. We're announcing the replacement tomorrow morning. It's you or we find someone else. Danny thought about his mom lying in that hospital bed. Thought about the bills stacked on his counter. Thought about spending the rest of his life loading boxes, wondering what might have been. Can I make a phone call? He asked. Chris nodded. Take your time. Danny walked outside into the parking lot. The evening air was cool against his skin. He pulled out his phone and called the hospital. Asked to be transferred to his mom's room. Hey, baby. His mom's weak voice came through the speaker. She always sounded happy to hear from him, no matter how bad she felt. Hey, Ma. How you feeling? Oh, you know. Same as always. Don't worry about me, but Danny did worry. That was the problem. He worried all the time. Ma, if you could have anything in the world, what would it be? She laughed softly. That's a strange question. I don't know. To see you happy, I guess. To see you doing something you love instead of just surviving. What if I told you I had a chance to do something big? Something that could help with your treatment, but it's risky? Then I'd tell you the same thing I told your father, God rest his soul. Safe doesn't mean happy. Sometimes you gotta take the risk. They talked for a few more minutes about nothing important. When Danny hung up, he knew what he had to do. He walked back into the gym. Coach and Chris were talking quietly, but stopped when they saw him. I'll do it, Danny said. I'll fight Volkov. Chris broke into a wide grin. Excellent. I'll have the contracts drawn up by tomorrow. After Chris left, Coach put a hand on Danny's shoulder. You sure about this? No, Danny said honestly. But when am I ever going to get another shot like this? Even if I lose, even if I get knocked out in the first round, at least I'll know I tried. At least I'll have that. Coach nodded slowly. Then we've got 3 weeks to get you ready. Starting tomorrow, you're training full time. Call in sick to the warehouse if you have to. This is the most important fight of your life. That night, Danny lay in bed staring at the ceiling. In 3 weeks, he'd be standing across from Viktor Volkov, the destroyer. A man who'd never lost, who'd sent fighters to the hospital. Everyone would expect Danny to lose. The promoters expected it. The crowd would Danny called Pete the next morning and quit his job at the warehouse. Just like that. 7 years of loading boxes gone in a 2-minute phone conversation. You're making a mistake, Miller, Pete had said. You're throwing away steady work for what? Some pipe dream? Maybe he was right. Probably he was right. But Danny had made his choice and there was no going back now. The news broke that afternoon. Social media exploded with the announcement. Viktor Volkov would be facing Danny Miller, a local amateur with a 3-1 record, in an exhibition match at the Metro Arena. The comment section was brutal. Who the hell is Danny Miller? This is a joke, right? They're feeding this guy to Volkov. I give him 30 seconds before he hits the canvas. Somebody call this man's family. He's gonna need a good hospital. Danny made the mistake of reading through them during his lunch break. Each comment felt like a punch to the gut. But the worst part was they weren't wrong. On paper, this fight was a mismatch. A slaughter waiting to happen. His phone buzzed. A text from Tommy, his old coworker. "Dude, you're trending on Twitter. They're calling it the worst matchup in boxing history." Danny put his phone away and tried not to think about it. Coach had mapped out a brutal training schedule. 6 days a week, 3 sessions a day. Morning road work at 5 a.m., technical training at noon, sparring and strength work in the evening. Sunday was for rest and recovery, which really meant ice baths and massage therapy that hurt worse than the training. The first week nearly broke him. Danny had thought he was in decent shape from his previous fights. He was wrong. What Coach put him through was a different level entirely. They weren't just preparing for a fight. They were preparing for war. Volkov's got a gas tank like a diesel engine, Coach explained while Danny gasped for air after a brutal circuit training session. He can go hard for 12 rounds without slowing down. You need to match that, or at least survive it. Danny's hands were wrapped and wrapped again, protecting them from the constant pounding. His knuckles were raw despite the wraps. His ribs were bruised from body shots during sparring. Every morning he woke up feeling like he'd been hit by a truck. On day 5, a reporter showed up at the gym. Some kid with a camera and a microphone looking to get content for a local sports blog. "Danny, what makes you think you can compete with a fighter of Volkov's caliber?" the reporter asked, shoving the microphone in his face. Danny was too tired to be diplomatic. "I don't know if I can, but I'm going to find out." Volkov's camp released a statement saying they're not even adjusting their training for you, that they're preparing the same way they would for any opponent. How does that make you feel? "Like I'm not even on their radar," Danny said honestly. "Which is fine. Let them overlook me." The clip went viral, but not in the way Danny had hoped. Sports talk shows played it as a joke. One commentator said, "This kid's honesty is refreshing, but honestly, he sounds like someone who's already accepted defeat." Danny watched the clip in his apartment that night, his body aching, his spirit lower than it had been in years. What was he doing? This whole thing was stupid. He was going to embarrass himself in front of thousands of people. The smart move would be to back out now, take whatever penalty the contract had, find another warehouse job. His phone rang. It was the hospital. "Mr. Miller, we need to discuss your mother's treatment plan," the nurse said. "The new medication seems to be helping, but we need to continue it for at least another month." Without it, she didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. Danny looked at the contract sitting on his coffee table. $10,000. Half paid up front, half after the fight. He'd already used the first $5,000 for his mom's treatment. There was no backing out now, even if he wanted to. The second week was worse than the first. Coach brought in sparring partners, bigger guys from other gyms who agreed to help prepare Danny for what was coming. They were supposed to mimic Volkov's style, aggressive, powerful, relentless. Danny got dropped 3 times in one sparring session. After the third knockdown, he stayed on the canvas longer than he needed to, staring up at the gym's water-stained ceiling, wondering what the point was. "Get up," Coach said quietly, not angry, just matter of fact. "I can't beat him, Coach," Danny said from the canvas. "We both know it. Everyone knows it, maybe not. Probably not. But you can make him respect you. You can show up and fight like a man. That counts for something." Danny got up. They went another 2 rounds. That night, Danny almost called Chris and told him the fight was off. He had his phone in his hand, the number pulled up, his thumb hovering over the call button. But he couldn't do it. Couldn't let down his mom, couldn't let down Coach, couldn't let down whatever small part of himself still believed this meant something. The media attention got worse as the fight approached. A major sports network did a segment called The Sacrificial Lamb about Danny's upcoming fight. They showed clips of Volkov destroying previous opponents, then showed Danny's amateur fights. The contrast was embarrassing. "This isn't even a fight," one analyst said. "This is an execution. I honestly question the ethics of this matchup." Danny stopped watching sports channels, stopped reading comments, focused only on the work. By the middle of week 2, something started to shift. Danny's body began adapting to the punishment. He wasn't getting dropped as much in sparring. His combinations were getting sharper, faster. He was learning to move, to slip punches, to create angles. Coach noticed too. "You're starting to look like a fighter," he said one evening after a particularly good session. "Not just someone who throws punches." "Will it be enough?" Danny asked. Coach was quiet for a moment. "Against most guys?" "Yeah. Against Volkov? I don't know, kid. I honestly don't know." The third week brought a new challenge. The fight promoters wanted Danny to do media appearances, press conferences, radio interviews, podcast spots, all designed to build hype for the fight, to sell tickets that were already sold out. The press conference was held at a fancy downtown hotel. Danny showed up in his only suit, a thrift store special that didn't quite fit right. Volkov's entourage arrived like he was a king. Expensive suits, an army of handlers, cameras following his every move. Volkov himself was even more intimidating in person. 6'4", probably 240 pounds of pure muscle. His hands looked like they could crack concrete. When he walked into the room, everyone's attention shifted to him immediately. Danny might as well have been invisible. The moderator asked questions. Volkov gave practiced, confident answers about his training, his mindset, his plans for future title defenses. When they finally got to Danny, it felt like an afterthought. Danny, your opponent has never lost in his professional career. What's your strategy going into this fight? Survive, Danny said, and the room erupted in laughter. Even Volkov cracked a smile. But then Danny continued. I'm serious. My strategy is to survive. To take whatever he throws at me and still be standing. You all think this is a joke, that I'm just here to make him look good. Maybe you're right. But I'm going to make him earn it. The room got quiet. Volkov's smile faded just a little. He looked at Danny like he was actually seeing him for the first time. I respect that, Volkov said in his thick accent. But respect doesn't win fights. I've faced Olympic champions, world title holders, legends of this sport. No disrespect to you, but you are not on that level. This will not go past 3 rounds. After the press conference, Danny went straight to the gym. He hit the heavy bag until his hands were numb, until Coach physically pulled him away. You trying to hurt yourself before the fight even happens? Coach demanded. I need to be ready, Danny said. I can't embarrass myself out there. Listen to me. Coach grabbed Danny's shoulders, forcing eye contact. You already won. You hear me? You took this fight when nobody else would. You've trained harder than I've seen anyone train. Whatever happens in that ring, you've got nothing to be ashamed of. Tell that to the guy who's going to be punching me in the face, Danny muttered. The final week was a blur of light training, media obligations, and sleepless nights. Danny visited his mom at the hospital. She was having a good day, alert and talkative. I'm so proud of you, baby, she said, holding his hand with what little strength she had. Not because you're fighting some big name, but because you're doing something that scares you. That's real courage. I might lose, Ma, probably will lose. So what? You lose, you get back up, you keep going. That's what we do. That's what your father taught us. Danny hadn't cried in years, but he felt tears threatening now. I'm scared. Not of getting hurt, of letting everyone down. His mom squeezed his hand. The only way you let anyone down is if you don't try. Go in there and fight. Whatever happens, happens. 2 days before the fight, Coach called an early end to training. That's it, he said. Nothing more we can do now. Your body needs rest. Danny looked at him confused. But we still have 2 days. And you need to recover. Trust me, you've done the work. Now let your body heal. That night, Danny stood in his apartment bathroom looking at himself in the mirror. He barely recognized the person staring back. He'd lost weight, all of it fat replaced by lean muscle. His face was harder, more defined. His eyes had something in them that hadn't been there before. Not confidence exactly, but determination. His phone buzzed. Another article about the fight. This one.
Fight night arrived like a freight train Danny couldn't stop. The Metro Arena held 12,000 people, and every single seat was filled. Danny had never seen anything like it. The warehouse he used to work at could fit inside this place 3 times over. The noise was overwhelming. Constant roar of conversations and music and announcers hyping up the crowd. Danny sat in his locker room, hands already wrapped, wearing borrowed shorts because he couldn't afford the fancy custom gear that real fighters had. Coach sat across from him, saying nothing. Sometimes silence was better than empty words. Through the walls, Danny could hear the undercard fights happening. Every 20 minutes, another roar from the crowd. He checked his phone one last time. A text from his mom's nurse. She's watching from her room. Says to keep your hands up. That almost made Danny smile. Almost. There was a knock on the door. Chris, the promoter's assistant, stuck his head in. 10 minutes. They're gonna do the main event introduction soon. Danny nodded, his throat too dry to speak. After Chris left, Coach finally broke the silence. You remember what we worked on? Yeah. Don't try to trade with him. Use your footwork. Make him come to you. Angles, combinations, move. He's bigger and stronger, but you're younger and faster. Coach. Yeah. What if I freeze up out there? What if I just can't do it? Coach stood and put both hands on Danny's shoulders. Then you unfreeze and keep fighting. Fear's gonna be there. Let it. Use it. That fear is your body trying to keep you alive. Channel it into speed, into movement, into survival. Another knock. Time. The walk to the ring felt like walking to his own execution. The arena lights were blinding. Danny couldn't see individual faces in the crowd, just a mass of humanity all there to watch Viktor Volkov do what he did best. Destroy people. The announcer's voice boomed through the speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, this exhibition bout is scheduled for 8 rounds. Introducing first, fighting out of the red corner with a record of 3 wins and 1 loss. The crowd barely reacted. Some scattered applause, mostly people just waiting for the real attraction. Danny Miller. Danny climbed through the ropes, his legs feeling like rubber. The ring looked huge under the lights. He retreated to his corner, where Coach was already setting up the stool and water bottle. Then the lights dimmed. A dramatic video package started playing on the arena screens. Highlights of Volkov destroying opponents, knockouts, victories, championships. The crowd began to roar. Fighting out of the blue corner with a perfect record of 28 wins, 0 losses, 24 by knockout. The undefeated heavyweight champion of the world. Viktor the Destroyer Volkov. The noise was deafening. People weren't just cheering, they were screaming. Volkov walked to the ring like a gladiator entering the Colosseum, his face calm and focused. He didn't acknowledge the crowd, didn't showboat. He was here to work. When Volkov climbed into the ring, Danny felt something primal kick in. This man looked like he could break Danny in half. Every muscle was defined, every movement purposeful. His eyes swept across the ring and landed on Danny for just a moment. In that moment, Danny saw no anger, no emotion at all. Just cold calculation. The referee called them to the center. Volkov stood a full head taller. Up close, he was even more terrifying. Protect yourselves at all times. Touch gloves. Volkov extended his gloves. Danny touched them, feeling ridiculous. This was real. This was actually happening. They returned to their corners. Coach gave Danny his mouthguard. Survive the first round. That's all. Just survive. The bell rang. Volkov came forward immediately, cutting off the ring with the skill of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Danny backpedaled, trying to create space, but there was nowhere to go. The first jab Volkov threw snapped Danny's head back so hard he saw stars. The power was unreal. Danny had been hit hard in sparring, but this was different. This was professional-level force behind every single shot. A right hand grazed Danny's temple, and his legs wobbled. Somehow, he survived the first round. Barely. "You're doing great, Coach," lied as Danny collapsed onto the stool. "But you gotta throw back. Can't just defend. He'll walk through you." Round 2 was worse. Volkov was figuring Danny out, timing his movements, cutting off his escape routes. A body shot folded Danny in half. He clinched, trying to buy time, and felt Volkov's raw strength as the champion easily pushed him away. The crowd sensed blood. They were cheering for the knockout. For the moment Volkov would end this mismatch, Danny went back to his corner after round 2, feeling defeated. This was exactly what everyone had predicted. He was outmatched, outclassed, out of his depth. "Look at me," Coach demanded. Danny raised his eyes. "You're still standing. He hit you with his best shots, and you're still here." That pisses him off. You see his face? He expected you to fold already? Danny glanced across the ring. Volkov was sitting calmly, but there was something in his expression. Not frustration exactly, but maybe. Surprise? Next round, you throw everything. You hear me? Stop trying to survive and start trying to fight. The bell for round 3 rang. Something shifted in Danny. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe it was anger at being humiliated. Maybe it was just the fact that he had nothing left to lose. But when Volkov came forward with that same confident pressure, Danny didn't back up. He stepped in and threw a combination. Left jab, right cross, left hook. The jab landed clean, snapping Volkov's head back. The crowd gasped. Volkov blinked, surprised. He threw a massive right hand that Danny slipped, then countered with another combination. This one landed even cleaner. The crowd's gasp turned into confused murmuring. For the first time in the fight, Volkov took a step back. Danny pressed forward, not giving him space to reset. He was fighting on pure instinct now. Everything coach had drilled into him over 3 weeks flowing out of him. Jab, move, angle off, throw the cross. Don't stand still. Make him chase by the end of round 3, the dynamic had shifted. Volkov was still winning, still landing the harder shots, but Danny was making it competitive. The crowd, which had been ready to witness a massacre, was now actually watching a fight. Coach was animated now, alive. You got his attention. Keep doing exactly what you're doing. Rounds 4 and 5 were brutal warfare. Volkov realized he couldn't take Danny lightly anymore and increased his aggression. But Danny kept firing back, kept moving, kept refusing to break. His face was swelling, blood trickling from his nose. But he didn't care. Between rounds 5 and 6, Danny looked across the ring. Volkov was breathing hard. Not exhausted, but working. His corner was talking to him urgently, making adjustments. He's uncomfortable, coach said, reading Danny's thoughts. You're doing things he didn't expect. He trained for a punching bag, and you're giving him a fight. Round 6 started. Both fighters came out aggressive, knowing this was the championship rounds where fights were won or lost. Volkov threw a combination that would have knocked out most fighters. Danny rolled with most of it, took what he had to take, and fired back. Then it happened. Volkov threw a right hand hard and fast. Danny had seen this punch before, on video, in his preparation. He'd watched Volkov knock out 5 different fighters with this exact punch. Without thinking, purely on instinct, Danny slipped it by millimeters and countered left hook to the body. Right uppercut as Volkov bent from the body shot. Then a left hook over the top that landed flush on Volkov's jaw. The sound of leather hitting flesh echoed through the arena. Viktor Volkov, undefeated champion, dropped to one knee. The arena exploded. Not just cheering, but screaming. People were on their feet, unable to believe what they'd just seen. The referee began the count. 1, ... 3. Volkov's eyes were clear. He wasn't hurt badly, more shocked than anything, but he was down. The count was real. Double quotes. ... Volkov stood up before 9, nodding to the referee that he was okay. But something had changed. The aura of invincibility was cracked. The referee wiped Volkov's gloves and waved them to continue. There were 40 seconds left in the round. Volkov came forward like an angry bull, throwing everything he had. Danny covered up, absorbing what he had to, moving when he could. The bell rang, saving him from the onslaught. Danny's corner erupted. Coach was screaming. Other trainers were jumping. Everyone was losing their minds. You dropped him. You actually dropped him. Danny could barely process it. His body was running on fumes, held together by adrenaline and will. The last 2 rounds were a blur. Volkov, angry and determined to finish, came forward with everything. Danny, exhausted beyond measure, fought on instinct and heart alone. He took massive shots that should have ended the fight, but somehow stayed upright. Somehow kept fighting. When the final bell rang, both fighters stumbled to their corners. Danny had survived all 8 rounds. More than that, he'd actually fought. The judges tallied their scorecards while the crowd waited in electric anticipation. This was supposed to have been a showcase, an easy night for the champion. Instead, they'd witnessed something unexpected. The announcer climbed into the ring with the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, after 8 rounds, we go to the judges' scorecards. Judge Williams scores at 76 to 75. Judge Chen scores at 77 to 74. And Judge Martinez scores at 76 to 75. Dot, dot, dot. Double quotes. Danny held his breath. All three judges score the bout for the winner by split decision. I see. Time seemed to free. Danny woke up in a hotel room the next morning feeling like he'd been hit by a truck. Actually, worse than that. He'd been hit by Viktor Volkov for 8 rounds. And his body was making sure he remembered every single punch. His face was swollen, barely recognizable in the bathroom mirror. One eye was almost shut. His ribs screamed with every breath. Moving from the bed to the bathroom had taken 5 minutes of careful, painful shuffling, but he'd won. That part wasn't a dream. His phone had died sometime during the night. When he plugged it in and turned it on, it immediately started buzzing nonstop. Texts, calls, notifications. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. The first text he opened was from Tommy, his old warehouse buddy. "Dude, you're everywhere. Turn on the news." Danny found the TV remote and flipped to a sports channel. His own face stared back at him. They were showing the knockout, the moment he'd dropped Volkov, over and over in slow motion. Commentators were talking, their voices excited and disbelieving. "This is one of the biggest upsets in boxing history," one analyst was saying. A warehouse worker with 4 amateur fights just defeated an undefeated champion. The sports world is in shock. Danny muted the TV and scrolled through his phone. The fight had gone viral. Completely, absolutely viral. Clips had millions of views. His name was trending on every social media platform. News outlets from around the world were covering it. There was a message from Chris, the promoter's assistant. "Call me ASAP. We need to talk about your future." Another from a number he didn't recognize. "This is HBO Sports. We'd like to discuss an interview opportunity." Dozens more from reporters, promoters, sponsors, people claiming to be agents. His head spun, trying to process it all. But the message that mattered most was from the hospital. "Your mother saw the fight. She's been asking for you all morning." Danny got dressed slowly, each movement a reminder of what his body had been through. He looked ridiculous going out in public with his face looking like it had lost an argument with a meat grinder. But he didn't care. The hospital was only 15 minutes away, but even that short drive was exhausting. When he walked through the doors, nurses and staff members recognized him immediately. Some whispered to each other. One older nurse just nodded at him with a knowing smile. His mom's room was on the 3rd floor. When Danny pushed open the door, she was sitting up in bed, looking more alert than she had in weeks. The TV in her room was on a news channel, showing footage of the fight. "There's my champion," she said, her voice weak but proud. Danny crossed the room and hugged her carefully. "Hey, Ma, you doing okay?" "Better than you look," she laughed, then winced. "Sorry, shouldn't laugh." "Hurts, but baby, I watched the whole thing. I couldn't believe it. My son fighting on TV, beating a world champion." "It was just an exhibition match," Danny said, sitting in the chair beside her bed. "Not technically for a title or anything." "Don't you dare downplay what you did," she said firmly. "You went in there when everyone said you'd lose, and everyone said you were crazy, and you proved them all wrong. Your father would have been so proud." They talked for an hour about the fight, about what happened, about what might come next. The doctor came in during their conversation to check on her. He gave Danny a look that said they needed to talk privately. Outside in the hallway, the doctor was direct. "The new treatment is working. Her numbers are improving. We can keep her on this medication for another 3 months. Her prognosis is much better." "How much?" Danny asked, already knowing the answer would be high. "With insurance, probably another 15,000. But Mr. Miller, given your recent success, I imagine that's more manageable now than it was before." Danny nodded. The second half of his fight purse was 5,000. With the media attention, there would be more opportunities, more fights, better paying fights. For the first time in years, money wasn't an impossible problem. Over the next few days, Danny's life became a whirlwind. Interview requests came from everywhere. Major sports networks, podcasts, morning talk shows, even international media. Everyone wanted to hear the story of the nobody who beat the legend. Danny did a few interviews, still uncomfortable with the attention. One interviewer asked him what the victory meant. "It means I can pay for my mom's treatment," Danny said honestly. It means I don't have to go back to loading boxes in a warehouse. But more than that, it means I'm not invisible anymore. For my whole life, I was just another guy nobody noticed. Now people see me. That's worth more than any paycheck. The clip went viral again. People connected with the honesty, the realness of it. Sponsorship offers started coming in. Nothing huge, but enough. A local sports drink company wanted to sponsor him. A boxing equipment manufacturer offered to provide free gear. Each deal came with money attached, money that Danny desperately needed. Coach's gym became famous overnight. Suddenly, the rundown place between the laundromat and pawn shop had people lining up to train there. Everyone wanted to work with the coach who'd prepared Danny for the impossible. "We need to talk about your next fight," coach said one afternoon while Danny was doing light rehab work. The doctor had cleared him to start training again, nothing heavy yet. "Already thinking about the next one?" Danny asked. "Kid, you've got 3 serious offers on the table. Real fights, real money. You're hot right now. We need to capitalize on it." Danny stopped stretching and looked at coach. "What kind of offers?" "Ones. A rematch with Volkov, bigger venue, actual title implications. Another's against a ranked contender, would put you in the heavyweight conversation. Third one's an exhibition tour, less risky, good money, keeps you in the public eye. What do you think I should do?" Coach was quiet for a moment. "That depends on what you want. You want to be a real fighter, climbing the ranks, going for titles? Or you want to cash in on your moment and make some money while people still care? Can't I do both?" "Not really. Fighting for real means risk. You could lose bad and all this attention goes away. Playing it safe means less glory, but more security." Danny thought about his mom, about the bills, about the uncertain future. But he also thought about how it felt standing in that ring, proving everyone wrong. "Want to be a real fighter," he said. "Not just the guy who got lucky once." Coach smiled. "Good answer. Then we got work to do." Word got out about Volkov wanting a rematch. The media loved it. The champion, looking to avenge his only loss. The underdog, trying to prove the first fight wasn't a fluke. The promoters offered Danny $25,000 for the rematch. More money than he'd ever seen in his life, he accepted. But before focusing on the rematch, Danny did something he'd been thinking about since the night of the fight. He went back to the warehouse where he used to work. Pete, his old supervisor, was in the break room when Danny walked in. The man's eyes widened. "Miller, that you under all those bruises?" "Hey, Pete, got a minute?" They sat down, and Danny pulled out an envelope. Inside was a check for $5,000. "What's this?" Pete asked. "Remember when my mom first got sick, and you let me take all that time off without firing me? And when I was short on rent, you helped me pick up extra shifts? This is me saying thank you." Pete looked at the check, then at Danny. "You don't owe me anything, kid." "I know, but I want to do this. You helped me when I had nothing. Now I can help back." Pete took the check, his eyes getting a little watery. "You turned out all right, Miller. Better than all right." Danny also returned to his old apartment building, found the landlord who'd been patient when rent was late, gave him 3 months advance payment, visited the corner store owner who'd let him run a tab when money was tight, paid off everything he owed plus extra. "You didn't have to do this," the store owner said. "Yeah, I did. You believed in me when I was nobody. Least I can do is pay you back." Training for the rematch was different from the first time. Danny wasn't the unknown anymore. When he trained, people watched. When he sparred, people filmed it. The pressure was immense. "Volkov's going to come at you different this time," Coach warned. "He's studied you now, knows what you can do. It's going to be harder, not easier." "I know," Danny said, "but I'm not the same fighter I was either." 3 months later, the rematch was set. This time, Danny walked into the arena as a legitimate fighter. He had professional gear, a real corner team, media credentials. When the announcer introduced him, the crowd actually cheered. The fight itself was everything Coach predicted. Brutal, technical, exhausting. Volkov was prepared this time, adjusting to Danny's style, cutting off his angles. It went the full 12 rounds, and when the decision was announced, Volkov won by unanimous decision. Danny lost, but he didn't feel like a loser. After the fight, in his locker room, Coach sat beside him. "You fought a hell of a fight," Took the champion 12 rounds. Nobody's done that in 3 years. Still lost, though, Danny said. Yeah, you did. But you proved something more important. The first fight wasn't luck. You belong here. You're a real fighter now. Over the next year, Danny fought 4 more times. Won 3, lost 1. Each fight built his reputation, his skills, his confidence. He wasn't a champion, wasn't even ranked in the top 10. But he was making a living doing something he loved, providing for his mom. And that was more than enough. His mother's treatment continued, and slowly, miraculously, she got better. Not completely, but enough to leave the hospital.